The blizzard hit San Jose, California, with a fury nobody had expected, transforming the winter of 1882 into something the locals would talk about for decades to come, as Amelia Patterson watched the last of her firewood dwindle to nothing. She pressed her palm against the frosted windowpane of the small homestead. Her late father had left her 6 months ago, watching the snow pile higher against the fence posts. The cold seeped through the glass and into her bones, making her shiver despite the 3 layers of wool she wore. At 22 years old, she had imagined her life would be different by now. She had pictured herself married, perhaps, with a husband to help manage the modest ranch, or at least with her father still alive to guide her through the harsh realities of frontier life. Instead, she stood alone in a house that felt emptier with each passing day, facing a winter that threatened to be her last. The provisions in her cellar would last another month if she was careful, but the wood was nearly gone. Her father had always handled the heavy labor, and she had foolishly believed she could manage everything herself after his passing. Pride had kept her from asking the neighbors for help, and now the storm had isolated her completely. The nearest homestead was 3 miles east, and in this weather, it might as well have been 300. Amelia turned from the window and wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders. The fire in the hearth had diminished to glowing embers, and she fed it the last 2 pieces of split wood from the basket. Tomorrow she would have to venture to the woodshed, assuming the door was not completely blocked by snow. The thought of going outside in this weather terrified her, but freezing to death terrified her more. She settled into her father's old rocking chair and pulled a quilt over her lap, trying to conserve what little warmth remained in the room. Her thoughts drifted to the town, to the people who had offered their condolences after her father's death, but had not extended much help beyond that. San Jose was growing rapidly, transforming from a sleepy pueblo into a bustling agricultural center, and everyone seemed too preoccupied with their own survival to worry about a young woman living alone on the outskirts. Sleep came fitfully that night. Amelia woke several times to add kindling to the fire, rationing every twig and piece of bark she could find. By morning, the storm showed no signs of abating. Snow pressed against the windows, creating an eerie twilight inside the house even though dawn had broken hours ago. She forced herself to eat a small breakfast of cornmeal mush and dried apples, then dressed in her warmest clothing. The woodshed was only 20 yards from the back door, but the journey would be treacherous. She wrapped a scarf around her face, pulled on her father's oversized boots, and stepped outside. The wind hit her like a physical blow, stealing her breath and pushing her backward against the door. Snow swirled in blinding sheets, and she could barely see 5 feet ahead. Amelia gripped the rope her father had strung from the house to the shed years ago for exactly this purpose, thanking him silently for his foresight. Hand over hand, she pulled herself forward, her fingers already numb despite the thick gloves. When she finally reached the shed and wrenched open the door, her heart sank. The woodpile was much smaller than she remembered. Her father must have used more than usual during his illness last spring, and she had not restocked properly during the autumn months. There was enough for perhaps 3 more days if she was extremely frugal, but after that, she would have nothing. Amelia loaded her arms with as much wood as she could carry and began the return journey. The wind had picked up, and the rope provided her only connection to safety. She was halfway back when her foot caught on something buried beneath the snow. She stumbled, and the wood scattered from her arms. Panic seized her as she scrambled to gather the pieces, her hands plunging into the deep snow, searching desperately for every log. That was when she heard it, the sound of a horse neighing somewhere close by. She looked up, squinting through the swirling white, and saw a dark shape moving toward her. For a moment, fear paralyzed her. Stories of outlaws and drifters circulated constantly, tales of women living alone who had fallen victim to men with bad intentions. But as the shape drew closer, she realized it was a single rider, hunched against the storm, leading his horse rather than riding it. "Madam." The voice was deep and rough, barely audible over the wind. "Madam, are you all right?" Amelia grabbed the rope tighter, uncertain whether to run or stay. The man approached slowly, and she could make out more details now. He was tall, with a dark hat pulled low over his face and a heavy coat crusted with snow. His horse looked exhausted, its head hanging low. "I do not mean you any harm," he called out. "My horse is about done for, and I saw your light last night. I have been trying to reach your house since dawn." She found her voice, though it came out shakier than she intended. "Who are you?" "Name is Yates Jackson, madam. I was riding through when this storm hit. Been lost for near about 2 days now." He took another step closer, and she could see his face more clearly. He was young, perhaps around her own age or a few years older, with sharp features and dark eyes that held no malice, only exhaustion and cold. "I can help you with that wood if you will let me. Looks like you dropped some." Against her better judgment, Amelia nodded. Yates quickly gathered the scattered logs, his movements efficient despite the obvious fatigue. Together, they made their way back to the house, the horse plodding behind them. Inside, the warmth of the dying fire felt like heaven. Yates stomped the snow from his boots and removed his hat, revealing dark hair matted with sweat and ice. He was handsome in a rugged way, with a strong jaw shadowed by several days of stubble and those striking dark eyes that now surveyed the small homestead. "I am grateful for your shelter, madam," he said, his voice more clear now that they were out of the wind. "I will not impose long, just need to warm up a bit and wait for the storm to break." "It has been going for 3 days," Amelia said, setting the wood down by the hearth. "I do not think it will stop any time soon." Yates frowned, and she saw genuine concern cross his features. "You are here alone?" She bristled at the question, her independence rising up. "I am perfectly capable of managing by myself." He raised his hands in a placating gesture. "I meant no offense. It is just that this storm is worse than anything I have seen in years, and I have been riding through California since I was 16. That is 8 years of winters, and none have been like this." 24, then, close to her own age. Amelia relaxed slightly and moved to add wood to the fire. "My father passed last summer. This is his land, my land now. I am sorry for your loss." Yates knelt by the fire as well, helping to arrange the logs for maximum heat. His hands were competent and sure, the hands of someone who had spent his life working outdoors. "You have anyone who checks on you? Neighbors nearby?" "The Hendersons are 3 miles east, the Talbots 4 miles west. In weather like this, they might as well be on the moon." She glanced at him, then at the window where snow continued to pile higher. "You said your horse is nearly done for. He has been walking through deep snow for hours. I gave him most of my feed yesterday. He needs rest and warmth, or he will not make it." Amelia considered this. Her father's horse had died 2 months ago, and the small stable attached to the house stood empty. "You can bring him into the stable. There is hay left from my old mare, and it will be warmer than leaving him outside." Gratitude flashed across Yates's face. "Thank you, madam. That is very kind." "Amelia," she said. "You can call me Amelia. Amelia." He repeated her name as if testing how it felt, and she found herself noticing the way his voice softened when he said it. "That is a pretty name." Heat that had nothing to do with the fire rose to her cheeks. She stood quickly, busying herself with putting water on to boil. "I will make coffee if you would like some. It is not much, but it is hot. That sounds like heaven right about now. While Yates tended to his horse, Amelia prepared the coffee and took stock of her situation. A stranger in her home, a storm that showed no signs of stopping, and provisions that would not last if she had to feed 2 people and a horse. The practical part of her mind said she should send him away as soon as possible, but her heart whispered something different. There was something about Yates Jackson that put her at ease despite her initial fear, and she could not deny that having another person in the house made it feel less like a tomb. He returned a few minutes later, brushing snow from his shoulders. "Your stable needs some repair work. The roof is sagging on one side, and there is a gap in the back wall letting in wind. If you have tools, I could fix it." "You do not have to do that. I want to earn my keep, Amelia. You are giving me shelter and feeding me. It is only right that I help out." She poured him a cup of coffee, and their fingers brushed as she handed it to him. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through her, and she pulled back quickly, confused by her own reaction. She had been alone for so long that even the smallest human contact felt overwhelming. Yates did not seem to notice her discomfort. He wrapped his hands around the cup and took a long drink, sighing with satisfaction. "This is the best thing I have tasted in days. It is just coffee. It is hot coffee in a warm house while a blizzard rages outside. That makes it about as good as anything can be." They sat in awkward silence for a few moments, the storm howling outside. Amelia studied him over the rim of her own cup, taking in the details she had missed before. His coat was well worn but good quality, his gun belt properly maintained. He wore spurs that had seen real use, and his hands bore the calluses of hard work. This was a man who knew how to survive, someone who had spent his life in the saddle. "Where were you headed when the storm caught you?" she asked. "San Francisco." "I have a job waiting there, working at a ranch north of the city. Good wages, steady work." He stared into his coffee. "Or at least I did. I was supposed to arrive 3 weeks ago. They probably gave the position to someone else by now. I am sorry," he shrugged. "That is the way of things. Work will come again. It always does." He looked up at her, and she found herself caught by the intensity of his gaze. "What about you? What are your plans for this place?" "I am going to keep it running," she said with more confidence than she felt. "My father built this homestead from nothing. I will not let it fall apart just because I am a woman alone." Respect flickered in Yates's eyes. "That is admirable, but you are going to need help, especially with things like chopping wood and maintaining the buildings. I can learn. I am sure you can. But there is no shame in accepting help when it is offered." Amelia set her cup down with more force than necessary. "I have had plenty of people offer help with conditions attached. Men from town who think that, because I am alone, I am desperate enough to marry just anyone. I would rather freeze than sell myself for the sake of having someone to chop firewood." Yates held up his hands. "I am not suggesting anything like that. I am just saying that if I am stuck here until this storm passes, I might as well make myself useful. No strings attached, no expectations. Just one person helping another because it is the decent thing to do." She wanted to argue, but exhaustion and cold had worn down her defenses. "Fine. You can help with the stable repairs, but as soon as the weather clears, you go on your way. Deal." He extended his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, she shook it. His grip was firm and warm, and again she felt that strange flutter in her chest. The rest of the day passed in a blur of activity. Yates proved true to his word, working on the stable despite the bitter cold. Amelia found herself watching him from the window more than once, impressed by his determination and skill. He moved with the easy confidence of someone who had spent his life doing physical labor, and there was something appealing about the way he attacked each problem methodically. By evening, he had reinforced the roof and patched the gap in the wall. He came inside looking half frozen, his face red from the cold, but there was satisfaction in his eyes. "Your horse will be much more comfortable now. I told you, my horse died months ago." "That is your horse benefiting from the work. Then he thanks you for your hospitality." Yates grinned, and the expression transformed his face from handsome to nearly beautiful. Amelia felt her heart skip a beat and quickly turned away, flustered. She prepared a simple dinner of beans and salt pork, stretching her provisions as much as possible. They ate in companionable silence, and she found herself relaxing more with each passing hour. Yates had a quiet way about him that put her at ease. He did not fill every silence with meaningless chatter, nor did he stare at her in the uncomfortable way some men did. He simply existed in the space, respectful and calm. "Where are you from originally?" she asked as they cleaned up after dinner. "All over, really. My father was a prospector, always chasing the next big strike. We moved around a lot when I was a kid. Colorado, Nevada, Arizona. He died when I was 15, and I have been on my own since then. Worked ranches mostly, some mining, a little bit of everything. Do you have any other family?" "A sister back in Denver, last I heard. We write when we can, but we have not seen each other in years." He dried a plate and set it carefully on the shelf. "What about you? Anyone besides your father?" "My mother died when I was born. It was always just the two of us." Amelia felt the familiar ache of grief. "He was a good man, taught me everything he knew about running this place, but there were some things he just never got around to showing me. I think he always assumed he would have more time." "We always think we have more time," Yates said softly. "That is the cruel trick of life." They lapsed into silence again, but it was not uncomfortable. As night fell and the storm continued its assault on the little homestead, they settled near the fire. Amelia offered Yates her father's room, but he refused, insisting he would be fine sleeping on the floor by the hearth. She brought him blankets and a pillow, and their hands touched again as she passed them to him. "Thank you," he said, and there was something in his voice that made her look up. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the air between them seemed to crackle with an energy that had nothing to do with the fire. Amelia retreated to her room, her heart pounding. She told herself it was just loneliness, just the natural result of being isolated for so long. But as she lay in her cold bed, listening to the storm and knowing Yates was just on the other side of the wall, she could not deny the warmth spreading through her chest. The next morning, she woke to the smell of coffee and something cooking. She dressed quickly and emerged to find Yates at the stove preparing breakfast. He looked up with that easy grin. "Hope you do not mind. I woke early and figured I might as well make myself useful." "You did not have to do that." "I know, but I wanted to." He gestured to the table. "Sit down. It is almost ready." Amelia sat, feeling strange having someone else cook in her kitchen. Yates served up plates of fried cornmeal cakes and the last of the bacon, along with fresh coffee. It was simple fare, but it tasted better than anything she had eaten in months. "This is good," she said, and meant it. "My father was not much of a cook, so I learned early if I wanted to eat decent food. Not that I am great or anything, but I can manage the basics." As they ate, Amelia found herself studying him again. In the morning light, she could see details she had missed before. A small scar above his left eyebrow, the way his dark hair curled slightly at the nape of his neck, the fine lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often. He caught her looking and raised an eyebrow. "Something on my face?" "No, I just—" She trailed off, unsure what to say. "I was just thinking that this is the first time I have had company in months. It is strange having someone else here. Good strange or bad strange, she considered this. Good strange, I think. His smile widened. I am glad to hear that. After breakfast, Yates went out to check on his horse while Amelia tended to her own chores. The storm had lessened slightly, though snow still fell steadily. She stood at the window, watching him move around the stable, and realized with a start that she did not want him to leave. The thought should have frightened her, should have sent up warning flags, but instead it felt right. When he came back inside, stamping snow from his boots, she made a decision. The woodpile is nearly gone. There are trees about a quarter-mile north, but I have not been able to get to them to cut any down. Do you think if the storm breaks enough, we could make it? Yates frowned thoughtfully. Is your father's axe still sharp? I think so. Then yes, we could try, but not today. The wind is still too strong and visibility is poor. Maybe tomorrow if the weather improves. Relief flooded through her. Tomorrow meant another day with him here, another day of not being alone. That would be wonderful. I can pay you for your work. I have a little money saved. I do not want your money, Amelia. But you are doing so much to help. I need to compensate you somehow. He stepped closer, and she caught the scent of snow and horse and something distinctly him. You gave me shelter when I was half frozen and lost. You fed me, gave me a warm place to sleep. That is payment enough. Besides, he added with a slight smile, I am starting to enjoy the company. Her breath caught. You are. Yes, you are interesting, Amelia Patterson, strong and stubborn and not afraid to speak your mind. I respect that. Heat rose to her face again. I am just doing what I have to do to survive. It is more than that. You have courage. A lot of people would have given up after losing their father, would have sold this place and moved to town. But you are fighting to keep it. His dark eyes held hers. That takes real strength. No one had ever spoken to her like this before, with such genuine admiration and respect. The men in town had offered help couched in pity or self-interest, but Yates seemed to actually see her as a person worthy of respect. The feeling was intoxicating. Thank you, she whispered. They stood there for a moment, the air between them charged with possibility. Then Yates cleared his throat and stepped back. I should check that stable roof again, make sure it is holding up in this wind. Yes, of course. As he headed back outside, Amelia pressed her hand to her chest, feeling her heart race. This was dangerous territory. She barely knew this man, and yet she felt drawn to him in a way that both thrilled and terrified her. She had always been practical, always kept her emotions in check, but something about Yates Jackson was breaking down all her carefully constructed walls. The day passed with them working in parallel, occasionally crossing paths and sharing brief conversations. Each interaction felt significant, weighted with meanings neither of them was quite ready to speak aloud. By evening, the storm had intensified again, and they found themselves trapped inside with nothing to do but sit by the fire. Tell me something about yourself that nobody else knows, Yates said suddenly. Amelia looked up from the sock she was mending. Why? Because I want to know you, the real you, not just the brave face you show the world. She set down her mending, considering. There were so many things she kept hidden, so many fears and dreams she had never shared with anyone. I wanted to be a teacher, she finally said. When I was young, I loved books more than anything. My father taught me to read, and I would devour anything I could get my hands on. I dreamed of going to San Francisco, getting proper training and teaching children. But when my father got sick, those dreams had to be set aside. Do you resent him for that? No, never. He did not ask to get sick, and he worked so hard to give me a good life. But sometimes I wonder what would have happened if things had been different. Yates nodded slowly. I understand that. I think we all have dreams we had to give up for one reason or another. What about you? What dream did you give up? He stared into the fire for a long moment. I wanted to have a place of my own. Not a big ranch or anything fancy, just a small piece of land where I could settle down, maybe raise some horses. But that takes money, and I have never been able to save enough. Every time I get close, something happens. My horse goes lame, or I get sick, or the job falls through. So I keep drifting from place to place, working for other people, never putting down roots. That sounds lonely. It is, but it is the life I know. He turned to look at her, and the firelight danced in his eyes. Being here with you these past few days, though, has reminded me what I have been missing. Having a place to belong, someone to talk to at the end of the day. It is nice. It is nice for me too, Amelia admitted. I did not realize how much I missed having someone around until you showed up. Maybe that is fate, Yates said softly. Maybe I was supposed to get caught in this storm, supposed to find your house in the middle of nowhere. Maybe there is a reason we crossed paths. You believe in fate. I do not know what I believe. But I know that sitting here with you feels right in a way that not much else in my life ever has. Amelia's breath caught. This was it, the moment where everything could change. She could make a joke, deflect, keep the walls up around her heart. Or she could take a chance on this unexpected connection, this warmth that had nothing to do with the fire and everything to do with the man sitting across from her. Yates, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. He leaned forward. Yes, I am glad you found my house. I am glad you are here. The smile that spread across his face was like sunrise breaking through storm clouds. So am I, Amelia, so am I. That night, sleep eluded her again, but for entirely different reasons. She lay in her bed thinking about Yates, about the way he looked at her, the way his voice softened when he said her name. She thought about his hands, strong and capable, and wondered what it would feel like to have them holding hers. The thoughts should have scandalized her, but instead, they filled her with a yearning she had never experienced before. The following morning brought a change in the weather. The snow had stopped, and weak sunlight filtered through the clouds. Yates was up early, and after breakfast, he pronounced the conditions good enough for a wood-cutting expedition. They bundled up in their warmest clothes and set out, following the fence line north toward the stand of trees. The snow was deep, making the journey slow and exhausting, but having Yates beside her made it bearable. He broke trail ahead of her, making it easier for her to follow, and several times he reached back to help her over particularly difficult spots. When they reached the trees, Yates selected several dead ones that would burn well and set to work with the axe. Amelia watched in fascination as he swung the tool with practiced ease, his movements fluid and efficient. Despite the cold, he worked up a sweat and he eventually shrugged out of his heavy coat. "You are really good at that," she observed. "Years of practice. I have worked as a lumberjack more than once." He paused to wipe his brow. "You want to try me, sure. You said you wanted to learn how to manage this place on your own. Might as well start now." He showed her how to hold the axe, how to position her body for maximum force, how to aim for the same spot each time to create a V-shaped notch in the tree. His hands covered hers as he guided her through the motion, and the contact sent tingles up her arms. "Like this," he said, his breath warm against her ear. "Use your whole body, not just your arms." Amelia swung the axe, and to her surprise, it bit deep into the wood. "I did it." "You are a natural." The pride in his voice made her glow with pleasure. They worked together for hours, Yates doing the heavy cutting while Amelia trimmed branches and helped stack the wood. It was hard, exhausting work, but there was something deeply satisfying about it. By the time the sun began to set, they had accumulated a substantial pile. "We will have to make multiple trips to get all this back," Yates said, surveying their work. "But this should keep you warm for the rest of the winter and then some." "We can start tomorrow," Amelia said. "It is getting too dark now." They made their way back to the homestead, both tired but in good spirits. That evening they prepared dinner together, moving around the small kitchen in an easy rhythm that felt natural. Amelia found herself laughing at Yates's stories about his various jobs, and he seemed equally entertained by her descriptions of life in San Jose. "You really threw a bucket of water on the mayor?" he asked, incredulous. He was being insufferable, going on and on about how women should not be allowed to own property. "So yes, I happened to trip while carrying a bucket, and all the water happened to land on him." She grinned at the memory. "My father was mortified, but I could tell he was also proud." Yates laughed, the sound rich and warm. "I would have paid money to see that. The mayor was not amused. He still gives me dirty looks whenever I go to town." "Well, the mayor sounds like an idiot." "He is." They cleaned up after dinner and, as had become their custom, settled by the fire. But tonight felt different. There was an electricity in the air, a sense that something was about to happen. Yates sat closer than usual, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "Amelia," he said softly, "I need to tell you something." Her heart began to race. "What is it?" "I know I said I would leave when the storm cleared, but the truth is, I do not want to go. These past few days with you have been some of the best I can remember. You make me laugh, you make me think, you make me want to be a better man." He turned to face her fully. "I know it is too soon, and I know you barely know me, but I cannot leave without telling you how I feel." "Yates, let me finish, please. I am falling for you, Amelia. Maybe I have already fallen. And I know that is crazy, that we have only known each other a few days, but I have never felt this way about anyone before. You are like the sun breaking through clouds, like warmth in the middle of winter. You make everything brighter just by existing." Tears pricked at her eyes. "I feel the same way. I have been trying to fight it, trying to tell myself it is just loneliness or gratitude, but it is more than that. When I am with you, I feel safe. I feel seen. I feel like maybe I do not have to do everything alone anymore." Yates reached out and cupped her face with his hand, his thumb gently wiping away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. "You do not have to be alone, not if you do not want to be." "I do not want to be," she whispered. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to. But Amelia did not want to pull away. She wanted this, wanted him, with an intensity that surprised her. When his lips met hers, it was like coming home. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, but it quickly deepened as all the emotion they had been holding back poured out. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Yates rested his forehead against hers. "Stay with me," Amelia said. "Do not go to San Francisco. Stay here and help me run this place. We can make it work together." "Are you sure? That is a big commitment." "I have never been more sure of anything in my life." He kissed her again, and this time it was full of promise and hope and the beginning of something beautiful. "Then I will stay, for as long as you will have me. Forever sounds good. Forever it is." They stayed up late into the night, talking and kissing and making plans. Yates would stay and help her run the homestead. They would expand the operation, maybe get some cattle, improve the buildings. In time, if things went well, they would make their relationship official. But for now, this was enough. The two of them together, warm and safe while the winter raged outside. Over the following weeks, as winter maintained its grip on San Jose, Amelia and Yates fell into a comfortable routine. They worked side by side during the day, bringing back loads of firewood, repairing fences, and preparing for spring planting. At night, they sat by the fire, sharing stories and dreams and stolen kisses that grew bolder as their connection deepened. Yates proved to be everything Amelia had hoped for and more. He was hardworking and skilled, but more than that, he treated her as an equal partner. He asked for her opinion on decisions, respected her knowledge of the land, and never made her feel lesser because she was a woman. With him, she felt like she could accomplish anything. The town of San Jose noticed when Amelia finally made it in for supplies with Yates at her side. Eyebrows raised, and whispers followed them through the general store, but Amelia held her head high. Let them talk. She had found something precious, and she was not going to let small-minded gossip ruin it. Mrs. Henderson, the neighbor from 3 miles east, cornered her while Yates was loading supplies. "Amelia Patterson, who is that man?" "His name is Yates Jackson. He is helping me with the homestead." "Helping?" Mrs. Henderson's tone was thick with implications. "Is that all?" Amelia met her gaze steadily. "He is courting me, if you must know. And yes, he is staying at the house, but everything is proper and respectful. He has been a perfect gentleman." "I am sure, Mrs. Henderson said dubiously. "But you should be careful, dear. You barely know him." "I know him well enough to trust him, which is more than I can say for some of the men in this town who have come sniffing around my property." Mrs. Henderson had the grace to look abashed. She and everyone else knew that several local men had made offers for Amelia's land, offers that had nothing to do with neighborly kindness and everything to do with taking advantage of a woman alone. Yates appeared then, carrying the last of the supplies. He tipped his hat to Mrs. Henderson. "Madam, Mr. Jackson," she replied, her tone noticeably cooler on the ride back to the homestead. Amelia fumed. "The nerve of her, acting like she has any say in my life." "People are going to talk," Yates said mildly. "It is what they do, but it does not matter what they think. What matters is what we know to be true." "And what is true?" He reached over and took her hand. "That I love you, that you love me, that we are building something good together. Everything else is just noise." Her anger melted away. "When did you become so wise?" "I have my moments." By the time spring arrived, transforming the landscape from white to green, Yates and Amelia had become inseparable. The homestead was thriving under their joint care, and they had even managed to purchase 3 head of cattle from a neighboring ranch. The future looked brighter than Amelia had dared to hope. One warm April evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, Yates grew quiet. Amelia noticed his unusual silence and turned to him. "What is wrong?" "Nothing is wrong. I am just thinking." He took a deep breath. "Amelia, I know we have only been together a few months, but they have been the best months of my life. You have given me something I did not think I would ever have. A home, a purpose, someone to love who loves me back." Her heart began to race. "Yates," he slid off his chair and knelt in front of her, pulling a simple gold band from his pocket. "I do not have much to offer except my love and my promise to work hard every day to make you happy. But if you will have me, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Amelia Patterson, will you marry me?" Tears streamed down her face as she nodded vigorously. "Yes, yes, of course I will marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly. "I had it made by the jeweler in town. I hope you like it. It is perfect. You are perfect." She pulled him up and kissed him deeply. "I love you so much. I love you too, more than I ever thought possible." They were married a month later in a simple ceremony at the church in San Jose. Mrs. Henderson and the other neighbors attended, their earlier reservations apparently forgotten or at least set aside for the occasion. Amelia wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully preserved all these years, and carried wildflowers picked from the meadow behind the homestead. As they exchanged vows, Amelia thought about how much her life had changed in just a few short months. She had been prepared for a cold winter alone, had steeled herself for loneliness and hardship. But Yates had appeared like a miracle in the midst of that storm, and he had brought with him a warmth that had nothing to do with firewood and everything to do with love. The reception was held at the homestead, with tables set up outside and food contributed by various neighbors. Yates's sister Sarah had even made the journey from Denver, and Amelia was delighted to finally meet someone from his family. Sarah was warm and funny, and she pulled Amelia aside during the celebration. "Thank you for making my brother happy," she said. "I have not seen him smile like this in years, maybe ever. He makes me happy too, happier than I thought I could be. He told me how you met, how you took him in during that terrible storm. That was brave of you." Amelia shook her head. "It was not bravery, it was just common decency. I could not leave him to freeze. Still, not every woman would have opened her door to a stranger. My brother is lucky to have found you. I think I am the lucky one." As the sun set on their wedding day, Amelia and Yates stood together, watching their neighbors and new friends celebrate. Yates wrapped his arm around her waist and pulled her close. "Happy?" he asked. "Beyond happy. I did not think life could be this good. It can be even better," he promised. "We are just getting started." The years that followed proved him right. The homestead prospered under their joint management. They expanded their cattle operation, added chickens and pigs, and even planted a small orchard. Yates's skill with horses led to a profitable side business breaking and training mounts for local ranchers. Amelia started teaching reading and writing to children in the area, fulfilling her old dream in a new way. Their first child, a son they named Thomas, arrived 2 years after their wedding. Amelia had been terrified during her pregnancy, haunted by the knowledge that her own mother had died giving birth, but Yates had been a constant source of support and encouragement. When Thomas finally arrived, healthy and squalling, Yates had wept with joy. "He is perfect," he said, cradling the tiny bundle with trembling hands. "You are amazing. I am so proud of you." Amelia, exhausted but elated, smiled. "We have a family now. The family I always wanted but never thought I would have." Thomas was followed by a daughter, Mary, and then another son, James. The house that had once felt so empty now rang with children's laughter. Yates proved to be a wonderful father, patient and loving, always willing to play or read stories. He taught Thomas to ride and helped Mary with her letters, treating each child as the precious gift they were. On cold winter evenings, when the family gathered around the fireplace, Amelia would sometimes think back to that terrible storm and the moment Yates had appeared out of the swirling snow. She had expected to face that winter alone, had braced herself for the cold and isolation. But he had brought warmth into her life, a warmth that had nothing to do with burning wood and everything to do with love and partnership and family. "What are you thinking about?" Yates asked one evening, noticing her distant expression. "The day we met, the storm." He reached over and took her hand, his touch as thrilling as it had been that first time. "Best storm of my life, mine too." She squeezed his fingers. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if you had ridden past my house, if you had not seen the light that night. I did not ride past, though. I found you and you let me in, and here we are. That is all that matters." "Here we are," she echoed, looking around at their children, at the warm home they had built together, at the life they had created. "I love you, Yates Jackson. I love you too, Amelia Jackson. Always have, always will." As the years continued to pass, their love only deepened. They faced challenges, of course. There were droughts and hard winters, sick cattle and failed crops. But they faced everything together, their partnership growing stronger with each obstacle overcome. Yates never stopped treating Amelia as an equal, and she never stopped appreciating the man who had stumbled into her life and changed everything. Their children grew tall and strong, inheriting the best qualities of both parents. Thomas became a skilled rancher, eventually taking over much of the daily operation of the homestead. Mary, bookish like her mother, became a teacher in San Jose, fulfilling the dream Amelia had once harbored. James, adventurous and free-spirited like his father, became a horse trader, traveling throughout California but always returning home. As Amelia and Yates grew older, their hair turning gray and their movements slower, they would sit together on the porch in the evenings, watching the sun set over the land they had built together. They would hold hands and talk about everything and nothing, comfortable in the silence that came with decades of companionship. One particularly beautiful evening, when Amelia was 65 and Yates 67, he turned to her with that same smile that had captivated her all those years ago. "Do you remember what I said to you that first night?" he asked. "About fate. You said maybe you were supposed to find my house, that there was a reason we crossed paths. I was right. You were my fate, Amelia. You were always my fate." She leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the same warmth she had felt that first winter. "And you were mine. You made me warmer than any summer sun, even now, especially now." They sat together as the sky darkened and the stars began to appear. Two souls who had found each other in the midst of a storm and had built a lifetime of warmth together. The cold winter that Amelia had feared all those years ago had brought her the greatest gift of her life, and she had never stopped being grateful. As the moon rose over the California landscape, casting silver light over the homestead they had built with their own hands and sustained with their love, Amelia and Yates Jackson remained on their porch, hands intertwined, hearts beating in rhythm. They had weathered every storm together, and they would face whatever remained of their days the same way. Side by side, wrapped in the warmth of a love that had started with an unexpected knock on the door during the coldest winter either of them had ever known. The homestead stood as a testament to what they had built, but more than the buildings and the land, it was the love that filled every corner that truly mattered. Their children and grandchildren would carry that love forward, passing down the story of how a cowboy lost in a storm had found not just shelter, but his home, and how a woman expecting a cold winter alone had instead found the warmth that would last her lifetime. Years later, when Thomas would tell his own children about their grandparents, he would always start with the storm. "Your grandmother expected to face that winter alone," he would say, "but your grandfather appeared like an answer to a prayer she had not known to ask. He made her warmer than any summer sun, and that warmth spread to all of us. That is the greatest gift they gave us. Not just this land, but the knowledge that love can come when you least expect it, and when it does, it can change everything." And so the story lived on, generation after generation, a reminder that the coldest winters can bring the warmest blessings, and that sometimes fate disguises itself as a stranger in a storm, waiting to transform loneliness into love and desperation into hope. Amelia and Yates Jackson lived well into their 80s, their love story becoming legend in San Jose. When they finally passed, within months of each other as devoted couples often do, they were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the homestead they had built together. The simple headstone bore both their names and a single inscription chosen by their children. The cowboy and his beloved, who found warmth in each other through every storm. The homestead remained in the family for generations, each new occupant adding their own chapter to the story, while honoring the foundation laid by Amelia and Yates. The stable that Yates had repaired that first week still stood, reinforced over the years but essentially unchanged. The orchard they had planted together continued to bear fruit. The land they had worked with their own hands continued to provide. But more than the physical legacy, it was the love story that endured. Parents told their children, who told their children, keeping alive the tale of two people who had found each other when they needed it most. It became a source of hope during hard times, a reminder that even in the darkest, coldest moments, warmth and love can appear unexpectedly and change everything. The winter of 1882, which had started with Amelia Patterson standing alone at her window watching her last firewood dwindle, had ended with her finding not just survival, but joy. Yates Jackson, who had been lost and freezing in a storm, had found not just shelter, but a home and a love that would define the rest of his life. They had expected nothing from that winter except hardship and cold. Instead, they had found each other, and in finding each other, they had discovered a warmth that no winter could ever diminish, a love that burned brighter than any fire, and a partnership that proved stronger than any storm. That was the true story of Amelia and Yates Jackson, two people who had been brought together by chance or fate or providence, who had chosen each other despite all the logical reasons to be cautious, and who had built a life together that became a testament to the transformative power of love. They had started as strangers on the coldest day of winter, and had ended as soulmates whose love story would warm hearts for generations to come. As the sun set on their story, as it had set on so many evenings when they sat together on their porch, the truth remained clear. Amelia had expected a cold winter alone, but the cowboy had made her feel warmer than any summer sun. And that warmth, born in the heart of winter, had lasted a lifetime and beyond, spreading out to touch everyone who heard their tale and reminding the world that love, when it is true and deep and real, is the greatest warmth of all.